Kelvin was an absolute loser, but at the same time a genius, who ends up getting run over by Truck Kun. So he was reincarnated into a fantasy world, but managed to rizz up the goddess to be his wife, and becomes the strongest S-rank summoner in another world. Then we see he is sent into a forest in the new world where he finally wakes up beneath a tree. Not remembering anything about his past life, he gets confused about who he is and where he is, when a small menu popped up in front of his face and starts talking. Isekai Siri explains that he has been reincarnated into the world of magic and fantasy, where he can become a Riz god if he wants. So he checks his stats on the menu to find out that he has chosen a great class for himself, and Kelvin learned he is a summoner. He seems to be pretty happy about the fact he didn't choose Magical Girl as his class, and decides to find the next town, in order to join a guild to start his life as a top adventurer. While walking through the forest, the menu screen reveals that Isekai Siri is actually the goddess named Melfina herself. A few moments later, he enters Chinatown where Melfina tells him about his lost memory by claiming that after dying, he ended up choosing a lot of cheat abilities. For this reasons he was able to make a goddess to his familiar as well, and she decided to join him to help Kelvin become the strongest mastermind in this world. Suddenly he asks her why he can't see her, and she replies that he doesn't have enough mana points to summon a goddess. Then he enters one of the guilds, and receptionist Angie gives him a form to fill out. While he describes his abilities as a summoner, he was stopped by Melfina, who tells Kelvin not to do so as the summoner class is extremely rare in this world. Besides, he is probably the only summoner in this entire kingdom, so if this news is revealed, he might have to face trouble. Kelvin decides to keep his true abilities a secret, and pretends to be a red mage, so he gets his guild card without attracting any attention. Next, he was told that he is an F-rank adventurer, and Angie claims that he needs to complete 10 quests if he wants to upgrade his rank. After the explanation, the receptionist shows him a bunch of quests, and he decides to go after the slimes in the forest, as he can try his summoning spells on them. Before that, he buys an old wooden wand with all of his remaining bitcoins and leaves for the forest to earn more money. After walking for a bit, he finally spots some slurp juice slimes, and immediately hides in some bushes, because he was overly cautious like Seiya Ryugen. Following, he checks their stats and realizes that the slimes are pretty weak, so he decides to not use his magic and simply weaken them by physical attacks. Kelvin jumps out and tried to sneak attack the slime with his staff, but the slimes sensed that a loser tried to attack them, while one of them did a John Cena move. Kelvin was hit in the chest and he was pushed back. Kelvin gets up once again and rushes in for an attack, but the slime dodged again because they were able to use observation haki, so they counterattacks him 3 times in a row, knocking Kelvin down to the ground. Kelvin gets up one last time and goes in for an all-out attack swinging his staff, but the slime was a pro and dodged it again. Thankfully this time, Kelvin calculated that 1 + 1 is 2, and immediately hits it with a second attack that knocks the slime to the ground, leaving it with almost no HP. Kelvin walks towards it because he smelled a great chance and extends his arms. The summoning magic activates and the contract is made with the slime. After that he summons the slime and planned to name it Sui, but Mukoda didn't allow it, so he gives his slime the name Clotho. Next, they are going to hunt some more slimes, and Clotho was a menace, because he was excited to kill his brother and sisters to absorb them. In the evening, they finally find a group of slimes and sneak towards them through a bush. Kelvin tells Clotho to take care of the right one while he deals with the other. Soon they jump out of the bushes. Kelvin immediately uses his wind magic to slash through the slime, while Clotho does some fancy Rocky Balboa boxing moves. Before eliminating his opponent, Kelvin is confused because Clotho seems to be extremely powerful, so he checks the stats of his slime, realizing that even at level 1 it has amazing stats. Melfina explains that this is because he is the only SS-ranked summoner in this world. Because of this, all of Kelvin's familiars would get some cheat powers after making a familiar pact with him. While they were talking, Clotho discovered another slime and beats it to the death. After the fight, Kelvin calls him back to his Pokeball. Next he reached Moisty Mire Town, and he sells the core of the slimes for 30 Dodge coins. Besides, he has enough money to get some food and a place to stay for the night. While crossing through an alley, he sees a bunch of cages, and inside of it many beautiful girls with slave collars on them. One of them is supposed to be a very rare half-elf with an aura plus 10,000 who was caught recently. He decides to ignore this because he had motion and simply walks by into an inn to get a room for the night. Soon he goes down to have some dinner, and his life in this world starts to take shape. A few days passed and he goes on some more adventures fighting against a bunch of wolves, monsters and other demons ready to become the strongest summoner in this world. So it has been several days since Kelvin has been adventuring, and finally he has completed his 10th quest, so he goes into the guild and is promoted to an E-rank adventurer, which seems to make the other adventurers jealous. Regardless, he asks for a high-ranking job, but before the receptionist can answer, a fruity, ugly, blonde-haired dude named Cashel showed up and tells him that he should take out the Black Knight. He tells him that he is a D-rank adventurer and wants Kelvin to join his party. Kelvin looks at his stats and realizes that he is far beyond the abilities of a D-rank adventurer. So he declines the offer and instead claims that they should have a competition about who can defeat the Black Knight first. Cashel seems to be surprised at this, but agrees to it. Before walking out the guild, Kelvin believes that Cashel might set up a trap and planning to prank him for clicks on YouTube. Although he knew it was a trap, he decides to fight against the Black Knight so he can test how strong he is. Cashel goes out into an alleyway and meets up with his friends, including a blue-haired clown and a fatty who wouldn't win the Biggest Loser. However, the fatty tells Cashel that he simply wants to use someone as his punching bag, and with an evil smile, Cashel tells him not to worry as he has already found a victim. After reaching the Black Knight's castle, which looks like Luigi's mansion, Cashel and his teammates rush inside and they discover that all of the creatures have already been slain. Suddenly, Kelvin appears from the shadows and tells them that they are late. He says that although the Black Knight is behind the door, they will need to battle him in order to reach the final boss. Since Cashel had always intended to kill Kelvin, he wasn't afraid. But before he could think of anything, Kelvin provokes Reiji by calling him a fat loser. However, Reiji rushes forward to beat up Kelvin, but Kelvin uses his magic to turn the ground into quicksand, which traps the fatty inside of it. Following, he uses his wind slashes at them, but Reiji blocks it, while the others barely manage to dodge the powerful attacks. After seeing Kelvin's powerful attacks, Gimel was terribly afraid and starts running away. But Kelvin was a menace, so he immediately summons Clotho to stop the enemy. Clotho has turned into a huge monster that chases the ugly clown back into the hall. Then we see Kelvin adventuring a couple days ago, and his slurp juice slime started acting weird. Soon enough it evolved into a giant slime monster, and Melfina explained to him, Clotho became one of the strongest summons alive, as it has the power to destroy an entire country on its own. Back in the present, Clotho smacks the clown with blue hair into a wall and knocks him out. Seeing this, the fatty uses his entire strength to get out of the quicksand, but is immediately grabbed by Clotho. While Cashel rushes towards Kelvin to kill him, Kelvin decides to play the Uno reverse card and beats the crap out of them. Following, Clotho helps his master to ties them up with some rope. After the warm-up, he opens the door behind him, only to find an armored knight with a giant sword. Kelvin moves forward and decides that he is going to capture the Transformer's knight instead of defeating it. Suddenly, the Black Knight refuses to fight against Kelvin, and they sit down to have a conversation. As the knight tells him about his story of serving different kings and even gives him a very old piece of candy, Kelvin realizes that the knight is a cool guy and asks him if he would be willing to form a familiar pact with him. The knight replies that he has nothing better to do, so he will agree only if Kelvin can defeat him in combat. A few hours later, the battle begins and Kelvin rushes towards the knight. He uses his wildest wind slashes, but his spell have no effect, while Clotho tries to attack the opponent from behind. The knight easily grabs Clotho and stops it from attacking, while Kelvin runs at him and uses earth magic to create a distraction for Clotho to escape. Soon the knight uses a dangerous slash that Kelvin barely managed to dodge. Next, Kelvin decides to use another earth spell, which has no effect on the knight. However, the Black Knight uses another air slash that Kelvin dodges, while Clotho engages him in a massive clash, totally distracting him and giving his master the opportunity to activate a trap. Kelvin uses a special magic that creates increased gravity around the knight, and he's stamped by the gravity to the ground. Kelvin thinks that he won the fight, but the knight uses his hidden demon powers and knocks off Kelvin's magic. before rushing towards him, and he sends very strong slashes at Kelvin, who barely manages to dodge it by using his earth magic. The knight closes the distance incredibly quickly and tries to finish the battle, but Kelvin uses his gravity spell once again, slowing the knight down, while Clotho showed up in front of the knight and uses the special Pokemon plant type attack named Solar Beam to blast his opponent away. The next morning, Kelvin visited the guild carrying the broken helmet of the Black Knight. Besides, he was praised by Angie and the other adventurers, as he also captured Cashel and his gang, who are now put in prison for their crimes. Later on, Kelvin planned to get a nap in his room, and it is revealed that he was successfully able to make a familiar contract with the Black Knight as well. So he moves towards his room to get some much-deserved rest, when he suddenly notices an old man who seems to have a crush on him. The old man says he is straight and introduces himself as Leo the Guildmaster. Kelvin is relieved to hear he is straight and wondered why Leo was staring at him before. After that, without wasting a single moment, the Guildmaster asks Kelvin whether he is from another world or not. This question shocks Kelvin, who immediately checks the stats of Leo to find out that the Guildmaster is pretty high-ranked. However, they sit down for some tea, while Leo tells Kelvin that Angie told him that not only did Kelvin capture Cashel and his gang, who murdered a lot of adventurers, but he also defeated the Black Knight alone as an E-ranker. Then Leo tells Kelvin that he knows that Kelvin is a summoner, so he is shocked once again and thinks whether he can lie about his identity. But both Melfina and Gerard tells him that he can't lie about his identity forever. So his servants advised him to find trustworthy allies. This gives him some confidence, and he calmly reveals to Leo that he is a summoner, as it is no point hiding it any further. Following, he asks Leo in return, claiming that he should have been able to figure out that Cashel and his gang of little sissies were criminals, so why didn't he stop them? Replies that Cashel belongs to a noble family of a neighboring kingdom, and that's why he wasn't in the position to arrest them without any evidence. However, Leo tells Kelvin to chill, as he is not here to be his enemy and would rather be his friend, but no diddy. Leo reveals that he has met people from another world before, like a weird guy who was overly cautious, and a guy who tamed a legendary Fenrir as well. Besides, some of them are the heroes of a neighboring kingdom. At that moment, Melfina remembers about reincarnating them as well, and promises to give the details to Kelvin later. Leo claims that there was a prophecy recently, and the goddess said that the Demon King is going to be revived soon. So that's the reason why the monsters around the area are growing so violent and strong. Kelvin learned that Leo wants him to defend Moisty Mire against the common monsters while the heroes deal with the Demon King. Kelvin asks what he will get in return, and Leo replies that he will increase his adventurer's rank personally and paying him a lot of bitcoins. Besides, he will be free to take any jobs he wants. Moreover, they will provide as much support as they can, and apart from that, he will never reveal his secret to anyone and provide him complete freedom. Kelvin smelled a very good deal and agrees to the arrangement, so he is immediately ranked up to a B-rank adventurer. Next, he goes back to the inn and gets some lunch before asking Melfina about the story of the heroes that were reincarnated before him. Melfina informs him that not long ago, Truck-kun decided to run over them too, and killed 4 more people from Japan. Because of this accident, she decided to reincarnate them into this world as heroes that will fight against the Demon King. Soon after finishing his happy meal, Kelvin takes out the money he saved after selling some bricks on the streets. Before going outside, Melfina asks what is he planning to do with so much money, and he excited replies that he is going to buy a slave. However, he walks past the same street on the first day in this town and notices all the cages assembled there just like before. When a man rushes past him completely covered in flames, the slave seller quickly reacted and put out the flames. The man seemed to be a customer who gets mad at the trader and leaves. The trader explained to Kelvin that one of her slaves seems to have a curse that burns anyone that touches her. When Kelvin looks past him, he is shocked to see that it is none other than the cute half-elf girl. He checks her stats and decides to buy her from the trader, knowing that the curse was stronger than the seal of the 9-tailed beast. The trader seems to be shocked at this and tried to stop Kelvin, telling Kelvin that she has a curse, which could kill him. But Kelvin doesn't care, and offers him the money he earned from selling many online courses. Before taking her out, the elf girl seems to be scared and in bounds but starts following him. Regardless, he turns around and tries to touch her, but the girl backs off, claiming that she has a curse and that she doesn't want to hurt anyone. Kelvin realized that she was wifey material, and calmly tells her not to worry. He gently touches her head before using his SS rank magic to dispel the curse that was placed on her. The elf girl is shocked to know that she is not cursed anymore and breaks down into tears of joy, also thanking Kelvin for his kindness, and introduces herself as Ephil. Following, he tells her not to worry and says he will keep her safe. Next, he takes Shoddy back to the crypt before asking the fat Big Mama version in white to make them some food. The lady seems to be skeptical about the girl, but when Kelvin tells her that she is a slave that he brought, she takes her into the bathroom with her to clean her and make Ephil pretty, while Kelvin waits at the table for some chicken nuggets and burgers. After some time, the lady returns back with Ephil, who is now dressed in a maid outfit from Fashion Nova. Kelvin told Ephil he would definitely smash her, and Ephil blushed. Then dinner has been served, and instead of chicken nuggets and burger, they got Big Mama's favorite home-cooked meal. After dinner, they returned back to the room. Kelvin explains everything to her and shows her his familiars. They checked Ephil's stats and used up her skill points. Soon night falls and everyone decides to get some sleep. But Kelvin became nervous because he realized he was a loser who had no experience with women. It has been a couple of months since Kelvin started adventuring with his new team member, and now they are able to operate in a far more coordinated manner. Besides, Ephil ended up maxing out her archery skills, and alongside her flame magic, she is able to deliver lethal blows to enemies with a single strike, which helps their team a lot, since only she was capable of using ranged attacks, while Gerard and Kelvin are skilled in hand-to-hand combat, despite Kelvin's class as a summoner. After taking care of the Trent in the forest, they return back to the guild where Angie congratulates them. However, Kelvin learned after another quest, he will be raised to an A-rank adventurer, while Ephil can get promoted to an B-ranker. Angie tells them to get ready for the exam and tells Ephil not to worry much about it. As she took the exam the last time, she taken advantage of her invisibility to effortlessly defeat the examiner and receive her C-rank card. Suddenly, Angie told Ephil that a new Costco has opened in Moisty Mire, and they also sell sweets. Angie asked Ephil and Kelvin if they both wants to accompany her to the new Costco to eat some sweets. Kelvin was more of a guy who only eats Wagyu steaks. But since Ephil was already very excited, he decided to accompany the two girls tomorrow. The next morning, Kelvin was waiting for the girls, and he was wondering why Ephil asked him to go ahead. Angie showed up first, and she told Kelvin that he had a surprise waiting for him. Then Ephil showed up in her new Fashion Nova outfit. Kelvin blushed at her beauty and told her she is slay. Next, he accompanied them to the new Costco that just opened, and they planned to buy some Japanese sweets, although they were in another world. However, they tried many delicious sweets, and Kelvin loved eating shoe cream. During the meal, many guys were jealous of Kelvin because he looked like a Riz god seducing two cuties. Suddenly, a group of nobles appeared and they were jealous because they will never get a girl. So one of them kicked their table away. Kelvin asks the stupid-looking guys what's their problem. But one of them yells that he is standing in front of the third prince of the neighboring country Trison, which had created cryptocurrency. However, the fat ugly prince decides to insult Kelvin, calling him a worthless scum. Also, he tells Kelvin to hand over his chicks for a ditty party. After the fat prince insulted his girls, Kelvin was angry and planned to teach the fat dwarf a lesson. Kelvin made his move and blasts away the purple-haired noble into the wall, terrifying the fatty. Next, Kelvin activated his muscle magic and beat up the other guy too, leaving the ugly pig alone. Following, Kelvin stepped forwards towards the prince and uses his gravity magic to bind him in place, while asking him what he is doing in this country. The prince refuses to answer, which leads to him getting forced to the ground even more. Soon after, the chubby Bitcoin billionaire prince spits out that he had traveled to meet with Leo. As he heard that there is a new adventurer who is extremely strong, and is currently using this guild as his base, he claims that he wants the adventurer to serve him so that he can win some glory and get some chicks to smash. So Kelvin tells him that he will never work for someone who doesn't work out. Following, they return back to the guild to get some sleep. The next day, Melfina tells them some news as she recently got information about what the heroes have been doing, and she gives Kelvin the stats to check them out. Kelvin notices that the heroes are just as strong as NPCs, considering that they were reincarnated a year ago. Melfina agrees and says they are worthless trash and they got no chance to defeat the Demon Lord, although he is soon revived. Kelvin understands the heroes are not nearly strong enough to take the Demon Lord on. Compared to him, who had only been here for a little over a month, The heroes were nothing more than insects. Also, Kelvin's team members are already much stronger and have advanced weaponry as well. While they were checking out their weapons, Claire knocks on their door and tells Kelvin that Leo wanted to see him. Kelvin goes straight to the guild where Leo tells him that recently a bunch of adventurers found a secret room inside of a dark cave, and the secret room seemed to live an extremely strong demon that can be rank S. However, no one within the guild is able to take on this task, so Kelvin accepts the quest. In the afternoon, Kelvin and his party finally arrive at the location only to find Erd. So Kelvin asks about any developments, but Erd honestly reveals that they have no idea how strong this demon might be. Next, he leads them into a small house with a secret door that allowed Kelvin and his group to go down the stairs to get into a cave. They walk through the dark and smelly cave, which looks very scary, but surprisingly he doesn't seem to sense the presence of any life forms in the area. After several hours of walking, they were reaching a huge gate where Kelvin tells his party members to stop, because he can sense the presence of not only one, but 2 demons inside the room. They all get ready, and Kelvin opens the giant door to see a room full of skulls with no lights. However, they keep moving forward when they suddenly notice a demon girl on top of an altar. This surprises Kelvin, but before he can think of anything, he hears a voice behind them. They turns around and discovers a strong demon who introduces himself as Arch-Demon Victor. A chill goes down Kelvin's back as he realizes that this demon is definitely the second S-rank aura he sensed before. Despite this, he maintains cool and asks him who the demon girl is. Victor simply closes the door and the room lights up completely. Following, Victor claims that the girl on the altar is the daughter of the previous demon lord. This is very shocking news, as even Melfina didn't know that the last demon lord had a daughter. Victor continues that he eliminated every single monster in this area so that any human can easily reach this room, and without any further talk, he attacks Kelvin with no mercy. Thankfully, Gerard blocks the powerful attack with his shield, but he is pushed back because of the overwhelming power. Kelvin immediately uses his gravity spell to hold him in place and asks what he wants from them. Victor reveals that he has a seal placed on the demon lord's daughter, and only humans can remove the seal. Once the seal is removed, he planned to devour the daughter of the previous demon lord and become the strongest demon alive. After that, Victor breaks free of the gravity spell and gets ready to kill Kelvin and his party. But instead of being scared, Kelvin is overflowing with excitement as he has never faced such a strong enemy before. Victor is confused because Kelvin seems excited rather than scared. However, he uses a unique black magic spell to create a group of undead monsters that rise from the skulls and attack the perverted opponent, who has been excited by the thought of fighting a strong enemy. Suddenly, Kelvin uses his wind slash to deal with these monsters, while Gerard crushed them with his sword. So they were cooking the opponent's army, but Gerard tells Kelvin that their numbers could be a problem if they are not careful. Then Gerard uses his special Black Knight slash to wipe out a bunch of monsters. As they continued to attack the strongest adventurer, Kelvin struck them down without hesitation. Besides, he was perfectly prepared and purchased a large amount of slurp juice before the battle. Their performance seemed to have astonished and impressed Victor, as they assault in perfect synergy. Next, Kelvin confronts him and asks if he wants to start a fight right away. Hearing this, Victor simply laughs and punches the ground to create a smoke cloud. He covers everything, and since the monster appears to be underground, Kelvin told Gerard to chill, and as soon as Victor tries to attack, Gerard is able to block it with his shield. Following, Gerard launched with another attack, but Victor escapes. Before, he tried to hit Kelvin, but Kelvin managed to dodge it. A few moments later, Victor appears before Gerard again, and they engage in a fierce duel, as if waiting for the opponent to make a move to win a Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel. Unfortunately, Victor is able to overpower Gerard with his enormous demon power and blows Gerard away. But before he could think about a new plan, one of the demon hands tried to hit him, so he is forced to block and jump away. At that moment, Victor smelled a chance, and he appears behind Kelvin. He planned to attack, but thankfully Clotho appears and blocks the attack, saving his beloved master's life. Surprised by the appearance of a new familiar, Victor tries to blow Clotho away, but he dodges out of the way while Kelvin uses this distraction to apply a binding magic on the demon. Holding one of his hands, Gerard runs up to him and is ready to attack, but Kelvin stops him just as Victor uses his strength to break through the binds. Kelvin couldn't believe that this demon got the power of an overpowered beast and immediately applies a magic buff to Gerard's sword. Kelvin tells him to launch an attack, but Victor began to smile like an ugly nerd, as his hand is already behind Kelvin ready to attack. Suddenly Kelvin tells Ephil to make her move, and Victor was shocked seeing Ephil appears right behind him with a fully charged arrow. She shot Victor as if she was a police officer in America hunting an innocent black citizen. But Victor was somehow able to bring back his hand and blocks the shot, taking an insane amount of damage while Gerard uses the moment to strike and chops away one of Victor's arms. Kelvin tells everyone to back off as the demon starts laughing again and claims that he is going to take his final form, and soon his body starts transforming into a huge demon. Kelvin realized that he would become stronger than Freezer, and quickly tries to finish him off. Before he could transform into his final form, he uses an earth splitter alongside a flaming arrow, and Gerard's special moves. But they are a bit too late as Victor transforms into his final form, and identified as a monster that could withstand powerful attacks. So his armor easily blocks the damage. Victor immediately rushes towards his opponent, while Kelvin creates a wall which is easily destroyed. At the same time, Gerard intercepts the attack and uses all of his strength to push Victor back. This doesn't seem to be enough as the demon quickly overpowers him and beats him to the ground. However, Victor gets ready to deliver the final blow, but at the crucial moment he is shot by Ephil, who distracts him with some series shots of arrows, and Clotho was backing them up. That's giving Gerard an opportunity to get back on his feet, so he started another try to attack the powerful demon. This time Gerard unleashes a huge combo of sword slashes, but Victor is surprisingly fast and is able to dodge and block all of the combo attacks. Suddenly Ephil starts aiming at Victor again, and while he was busy dealing with dodging everything, Clotho appears in front of him and shoots a ton of cursed swords. After being attacked by so many high-ranking spells, he was unable to escape. Kelvin takes advantage of this situation and uses one of his most powerful spells, accompanied by Ephil's blazing arrows and Clotho's solar beam. The fusion of their magic hits Victor on the chest, and he is blasted into the wall, which creates a huge tremor. Some parts of the roof starts collapsing on them, and the whole room was covered with dust. Next, Kelvin was surprised after seeing Victor uses his body to block one of the huge rocks that was going to fall over the Demon King's daughter. Following, he collapses on the ground, utterly defeated. Kelvin walks up to him and asks, why did he try to save the girl, and not his own life? Finally, Victor reveals the truth, and he explains to Kelvin his reason to fight. So Victor says he was one of the most trusted servant of the previous Demon Lord, and was tasked to keep the existence of his daughter a secret, as it might put her in danger. The Demon Lord was afraid that the heroes or other enemies might plan to kill her. So Victor became her babysitter, and taught her how to fight, how to read, and everything else in a small castle, which is now destroyed. Then Kelvin learned about the day when the humans arrived with the hero completely outnumbering the demons. Knowing that there was no way to escape this, the Demon Lord gave Victor one final task, and he was asked to make sure that his daughter survives. Besides, he put a seal on her which can only be broken by a kind-hearted human after the actual hero has died. While taking his last breath, Victor requests Kelvin to take the girl into his party, and show her the world as all she has ever seen is death and destruction. After requesting his selfish wish, the Demon Lord's right hand passes away, while Kelvin walks up to the altar and breaks the seal to raise her up. After the seal was broken, the girl wakes up out of her coma, and she seems to know what had happened. She immediately begins to cry. After a while they all walk out and Erd asks what happened inside. So Kelvin lies that the girl on his back was just a normal orphan who was kidnapped by the demon. Also, he reports that they managed to defeat the demon on rank S. Following, he gives Erd a piece of Victor's armor and tells him that this is the proof about their victory. After reporting everything to Erd, Kelvin wanted to take a break, and they quickly move out from the area to rest on a mountain. He knows that if anyone learned about Sarah's identity, they would get into big trouble. Meanwhile, Sarah seems to have calmed down and introduces herself to Kelvin. Suddenly she asks whether he is sure that he wants a demon in his party. But Kelvin obviously can't pass a chance of creating a harem, and was planning to give her a Thai massage with a lot of baby oil that he bought from Amazon. Following, she was very nervous to visit a human town. Thankfully, Ephil and the other party members comfort her. Next, they travel back to Moisty Mire, and everything that Sarah sees is new to her. However, Kelvin tells Ephil to take care of her while he goes back to the guild to report everything about the battle. As soon as he opens the door to meet up with his team members, he finds a party and everyone was waiting for him as he has been promoted to an A-rank adventurer. They all drink prime hydration vodka flavor to get drunk and eat late into the night. In the middle of the night, Kelvin woke up because he was thirsty. He noticed Sarah outside looking at the moon, and she thanked Victor for teaching her everything. She also planned to enjoy her life and wanted to experience many new things with Kelvin and his party. Some days have passed since they found Sarah, and finally she has opened up to them. Also, Kelvin learned blacksmithing and created some ugly-looking gears for Sarah, a new Roblox sword for Gerard. Sarah and Gerard thanked Kelvin for forging so many new items, but Kelvin seems to be tired after playing GTA 6 all night long. So he decides to take a nap. When he suddenly remembers that ever since he came to this world, all that he has eaten is bread and not a single grain of rice. He immediately decides that he needs to find a place to purchase rice. After a couple of days of research, he learns about a kingdom called Torush. So they travel on a carriage to find Kelvin's favorite food, and Sarah still gets excited over every little thing. Next, she looked at the river and Kelvin planned to teach her how to fish. Suddenly, the carriage stops as a bunch of ugly thieves ambush them. A blue-haired OnlyFans chick tells the driver to stop moving if he cares for his life. Then she says they are members of the Black Wind Gang, but Ephil and Sarah weren't scared. However, Kelvin learns that this group lives in the Torush region and they are a famous bandit gang. Kelvin checks their stats and he is disappointed because of their low levels. He remembers that the NPCs in Moisty Mire were stronger. They wouldn't even serve as a warm-up, so he tells Sarah to take care of them. Before he tells her that she can't use her new weapons as it would kill them. She gets disappointed but still moves out alone, which surprises the stupid-looking thieves. Suddenly, the OnlyFans chick laughs at Sarah and tells her teammates to not hurt the girls as the boss would want them alive to play strip poker with them. One of the guys made his move but is blasted away. This shocks the group of thieves, but the OnlyFans chick thought it was just beginner's luck. Next, the other guys attacked Sarah but get blasted away in a similar way while the big guy tries to crush her with a massive hammer. Unfortunately, Sarah simply stops the hammer with one hand. They underestimated Sarah, thinking she was just a little girl with the strength of a toddler, but they were totally wrong. After a while, Sarah taught them a lesson and ties them all up with some rope. The OnlyFans chick can't keep her mouth shut, and like a classic feminist influencer, she starts screaming at them that her boss is level 70 and he will make them pay for this. Kelvin and Sarah are unfazed by it and tell her that Sarah herself is level 95, so she finally shuts up. After that, they finally arrive into the Kingdom Torush and Kelvin realizes that it looks like an older version of Japan. They looked around the area and both Ephil and Sarah witness the sea for the first time. Following, they visits the Adventurers Guild where an old lady, who looks like a shriveled raisin, welcomes them and claims that Leo has told her about a famous adventurer with black hair. Besides, they learns that Guildmaster Miss used to be on the same adventurer party with Leo. This makes Kelvin trust her and he tells her about the thieves that they caught. Guildmaster Miss takes this seriously and tells them more about the Black Wind Gang. He learns they were once defeated by some A-rank adventurers, who are now treated as national heroes. But these heroes decided to take control of the group themselves and began kidnapping women and children to sell them as players for Squid Game. Ephil says they should immediately find these people and catch them. But Miss claims that it is not that easy, as if they catch the national heroes, this could result in big problem. Kelvin thinks about it when he suddenly feels the presence of some people with no motion coming through the front gate of the town. And his suspicions are confirmed after he spots the hero and their party walking into the town. So Kelvin says to Miss that if the hero's party took down this gang of thieves, then the public cannot be disappointed and the heroes do not belong to any government, so there would be no problems in that. Miss agrees with this suggestion and invites the heroes into the guild, before explaining the situation about the Black Wind Gang to them. In the meantime, Kelvin and his party goes into the hideout of the thieves and they immediately knocked one of them out. Next, we see a guy looking like Joker ordered from Wish, who was harassing some women. At that moment, Kelvin opened the door, and before the ugly dude can react, Gerard smashed him into the wall, knocking Joker ordered from Wish out. They then move forward and open the door of the room where the leaders are, and Kelvin immediately insulted their mamas. However, a fight breaks out and the leader of the group believes that he is on the same level as Kelvin. but Kelvin soon tells him that beating his entire party is easier than frying some fries at McDonald's. Suddenly, the bandit boss realizes they had no chance and Kelvin was unleashing a powerful magic attack. Meanwhile, Toya and his friends enters the hideout and starts walking through the corridors trying to find the slaves. A few minutes later they came across a door and open it to find Clotho in front of all kidnapped people. Toya immediately takes out his sword, but Ruka runs up in front of Clotho and she tells the heroes that this slime belongs to the Oni-chan who saved them. However, they were confused, but the girl's mom explains that some A-rank adventurers came before. They were able to free them and took out the bandits in this room. Also, they learned before the A-rank adventurers were going further to deal with the bandit boss, they left Clotho behind to make sure that everyone are safe in their absence. So Ellie tells the heroes that they should quickly find them as the leaders are super strong warriors trained by Mr. Miyagi. After hearing this, Toya and his party immediately rushes out of the room into the hallway. When they found another door, they jumped into the room, only to find the actual gang leaders on the floor, but they mistakenly believed that they were A-rank adventurers who had rescued the slaves. Following, they enter another room, only to find Kelvin and his party sitting there and acting like thugs. Kelvin keeps playing the villain and tells Toya that the A-rank adventurers were no match against him. The heroes were shocked after hearing this and plan to defeat Kelvin. Suddenly, he stands up and says that he wants to challenge them to a battle, and the loser has to grant the winner a wish. However, the heroes' party shares a single brain cell and they agree to this. Suddenly, Kelvin tells them that he will be fighting them all at once alone. At first, Giga Chad Toya tells him that he can't fight like that as it is dishonorable, but the girls in his team knock some sense into him. In the meantime, Kelvin goes to his group and tells them about his plan for using the heroes to capture Kristoff and his gang of thieves. Moreover, he really wants to fight the heroes' party to see how strong they are, and also, Kelvin wants to test his new secret equipment. The heroes' party prepared their next move and get ready to fight. Next we see Toya rushing towards Kelvin, who assumes that Kelvin is a caster. He thinks Kelvin is weak, but he is wrong. So Kelvin simply uses some fireballs, but Setsuna made her move and protects her comrade. Also, she tried to hit Kelvin with a powerful slash. Suddenly Nana ordered her fire dragon to attack the enemy with his fire breath. But Kelvin immediately uses a speed buff on himself, and it appeared behind Miyabi. He touches her from behind, using his special armor. Then we learn that Skill Eater allows Kelvin to copy any skill he wants. So he is able to steal Miyabi's unique skill. As she falls to the ground, Toya got angry and attacked Kelvin and tried with all his strength to finish him off. Then we see Nana starts healing Miyabi while Setsuna was protecting them. Toya tells him to stop running away, but Kelvin replies he needs to become faster to catch him, so Toya attacked again. At this moment, Kelvin used his butter knife to block the attacks. Suddenly, his favorite butter knife breaks off when it clashes with Toya's sword. However, Kelvin decides to use his bare hands to block all the blows, and he manages to push his opponent back. The girls are more than surprised since Toya has S-rank sword skills, and Kelvin is still able to fight him without any weapons. Suddenly, Setsuna decides to support her friend and attacks, but Kelvin dodged and cast an earth spell. He created a huge wall of earth in front of her, and Setsuna planned to cut it apart. So she uses her unique skill, which allows her cut through anything she wants, and the wall is cleanly sliced into two. Before she can regain her balance, Kelvin attacks with a powerful spell and aims it at his opponents. But the blast is blocked by Toya, who takes a lot of damage, but saves Setsuna. Meanwhile, his party members seem to be worried about him, but he gets up once again, only to get slapped by Setsuna, who tells him to think about himself as well. This makes things very awkward for Kelvin, as he just stands there and waits while the girls were lecturing their ugly loser teammate about how they are all a team. However, Kelvin asks whether they are done with their chit-chat as he is getting pretty bored. Next, Kelvin provoked the heroes and asks if they had finished changing Toya's diaper. At that moment he was blinded by a fairy and he was impressed. Following, Nana immediately uses her ice magic to finish Kelvin off, and she frees Kelvin while Miyabi uses her gravity magic to stop Kelvin in his place. Toya and Setsuna ran towards Kelvin, which forces Kelvin to use an explosion magic. The heroes took a lot of damage, but they stand up and look over to see Kelvin emerge from the dust completely unharmed. Then Kelvin gave Nana and Miyabi an advice. So he tells them that after they cast their binding spells, they should have followed it up with some offensive spells which would have made it much harder to escape. Following, he tells Setsuna that her attacks are way too easy to read, and that she should do OnlyFans instead, fighting with a katana sword. This makes Toya really mad, who decides to use his special power, and his sword suddenly splits into two. Setsuna gets ready for an attack as well, but this time Nana attacks first with her most powerful ice magic that creates a bunch of icicles below Kelvin. Meanwhile, Miyabi also decides to make her move and uses her magic to create a huge golem. After that, she starts shooting Kelvin with dark magic, and Sarah asks Kelvin if he needs help. When he sees that things are becoming exciting, he makes a few golems of his own to stop the attack. While he tells his golems to buy him some time, he immediately starts creating a bunch of magic circles around him all at once. Kelvin was a Sigma, and he scares and confuses the heroes, but soon enough Miyabi realizes that he is trying to create an extremely unique spell that can free him from the frozen icicles. Setsuna immediately made her move and slicing through the golems. She is heading towards Kelvin, but before she could reach him, he is able to use this new spell that creates a large number of very powerful blasts that totally destroy the icicles, freeing him. However, Setsuna knew that she can't let him get the upper hand and attacks again. Unfortunately, Kelvin is way faster than Setsuna, and before she could hit him, he punches her in the stomach, knocking her out. Suddenly, Miyabi's ogre starts attacking him, and he realizes that the best way to destroy it is to aim for the caster, so he jumps up in the air and knocks Miyabi out as well, destroying the ogre completely. As Nana sees this, she is left with only one option. She flies into the air on her baby dragon, and uses an ice spell to cover herself in an icy crystal. But before she could reach him, Kelvin just uses the powerful binding magic that he had used against S-rank demon Victor. However, Nana immediately is unable to move, and falls of the sky like a dead fly. However, Toya is able to catch her, but he is furious after seeing Kelvin hurting his friends, so he starts swinging his sword like a fruity biscuit, while Kelvin is able to block his attack by using his observation haki, and just as Toya starts charging for a massive strike, Kelvin cleanly bypasses his defense. Suddenly Kelvin hits his opponent with an uppercut, knocking his opponent out immediately. A few hours later, Toya wakes up from his beating and immediately looks around and wonders why his teammates staring at him worriedly while Kelvin was talking to Ruka. At first he looks for his sword, planning to attack Kelvin again, but he thought about the situation, seeing the girl close sitting on Kelvin's lap smiling. He was confused and asks what is happening, so Kelvin finally reveals that he is just an adventurer and his party saved the slaves. However, Toya asks why they had to fight him. At that moment, Toya remembers that while they were fighting, Kelvin kept telling his group what they were doing wrong and was probably trying to train them. Toya realizes that Kelvin is a nice guy, so he apologizes and asks Kelvin to help him to become stronger. The next morning, Kelvin meets up with Guild Master Miss, who thanks him for capturing the Black Wind Gang, and claims that they are all rotting in a smelly prison right now. Following, she asks whether he would be staying in this town for longer, but Kelvin replies that he'll probably leave soon after getting some rest and checking out the town. Then we see Kelvin and his friends in a cave near the sea, while Toya and his girls were fighting against SpongeBob's neighbor Squidward as an exercise to become stronger. Following, Kelvin guides them through the fights, and soon enough Squidward was defeated and returned to Bikini Bottom. After that, they all sit down on the picnic laid out by Ephil, and they all start eating. Following this, Kelvin learns how Toya and his friends got isekai'd into this world. According to Toya, he was chilling with his friends in the classroom when suddenly everything started glowing. The next moment they met a goddess named Melfina, who told them that they are reincarnated into another world. Toya thought she was capping, but after waking up in a cathedral, he was shocked that the goddess told them the truth. However, they were summoned in front of a priestess, who has been guiding them ever since. Following, Kelvin asked them what his team would do if they encountered an S-rank monster. Toya replies they need be careful, and have to make sure that they are not mindlessly running into danger. At that moment, Sarah said that she had caught something big and an S-rank dungeon boss monster appeared behind her. Sarah immediately starts beating it with her punches, and she planned to make it into delicious sushi rolls, while Toya and his teammates were shocked to see someone fighting against an S-rank monster. Later that day, Toya and the girls plan to set off to do their duties as heroes, and Kelvin gives them a pendant each that he created himself as a good luck charm. However, the heroes thanked Kelvin and said goodbye. Kelvin turns around and tells Gerard that he plans to spend some more time adventuring on this continent. While talking, a messenger arrives with the message that the Queen of Torush has requested their presence in her palace. They immediately rush to the castle, and Kelvin took a closer look at the castle, and was surprised by the fact that it was old Japanese architecture, which made him very excited. Following, they enter the castle, and before stepping on the Japanese mat they were taking off their shoes. However, they all bow down in front of the queen, who tells them not to worry about the formalities, and she thanks them for their help with the capture of the Black Wind Gang and their leader Christoph. Besides, she tells them that normally she would have organized a huge public ceremony to honor them as heroes, but considering that they are adventurers from Parth, it could create some issues with the people living here. She then promised Kelvin to grant him a wish. Kelvin is a simp and replies that he knows that Torush is producing a crop which is very similar to rice that was found in his old world, and asks for the permission to buy this crop from her kingdom. Queen Tsubaki seems surprised, because normally everyone wants to be rewarded with 100 bitcoins, but Kelvin replies that he doesn't really care about all that stuff. Following this, she organizes a small banquet for the heroes, and they all eat a lot of rice, alongside some Panda Express dishes that they all enjoyed to their heart's content. Some days have passed now, and Kelvin has been staying at the castle. Next, we see Ephil arrives in the room and has started creating a bunch of Japanese food, which was buzzing, because Ephil has cooking skills at rank A. Kelvin starts eating the rice balls when Tsubaki also joined, claiming that even her chefs can't create a rice ball as delicious as this one. She then snuggled up to Rizgod Kelvin and asks Kelvin whether he would want to stay here in Torush and work for her, but he refuses the offer kindly. Tsubaki laughs and tells him that if he ever changes his mind, he is welcome to work in Torush. When it got dark, they all get ready to leave back for Parth, and Tsubaki reveals them that they are going to use a special means of travel. She tells him that this is connected to the gate to the continent Parth, and that they will immediately reach Moisty Mire once passing through. However, he went through and arrived in his hometown. The next morning, Kelvin was eating breakfast while sipping Arizona iced tea. Following this, he tells Ephil that he has bought a house for them. They are all happy as they see the massive mansion for the first time, and eagerly open the door to get inside. A few hours later, they see the two slaves that they rescued 2 weeks ago in Torush, and they learned that Ellie and Ruka, who would now be working as the servants of this mansion. Later on, Kelvin enters a room that has been converted into a traditional Japanese public bath, and takes a long, well-needed bath before collapsing on his bed for the night to get some sleep. Suddenly, he hears his wifey number one's voice, who claims that she is done with creating her avatar. At the same time, Kelvin realized he got enough mana points to summon her. He quickly gets off his bed and immediately chants a spell that creates a magic circle, and through it descends the beautiful goddess Melfina, who looks just as pretty as Kylie Jenner. After Melfina being summoned, Kelvin tells her that he always wanted to clap some goddess cake. The next morning, everyone is greeted by Melfina at the breakfast table, but no one seems to recognize her until she reveals that she was summoned last night by Kelvin. Everyone is surprised to see a goddess, although they talked with her a lot of times. However, they soon get used to her while she happily eats cookies made by Ephil, and Kelvin asks whether calling her by her real name would be fine as she is a famous goddess. Following, she turns towards Kelvin, and as a thanks for summoning her into this world, she gives him a reward by drawing a flower in the air with her magic. It was like an indirect kiss from the goddess, and she claims that he now has the grace of the goddess of reincarnation. Following this, Melfina explains that he got 2 new abilities, and the first one is a defensive skill which can be applied once a month. This ability will protect him from an attack that would otherwise have cost him his life. Next, she tells him about the second ability and reveals that he possesses the power to summon his own hero into this world. Later that day, Sarah challenges Melfina to a battle in their training room to decide who is allowed to pop Kelvin's cherries first. Gerard was excited about this fight because his Netflix subscription has expired. Gerard calmly sits in the corner bench alongside Ruka and let the girls cook. A few moments passed and Melfina's spear shatters because of the impact of their powerful attacks. Despite losing, Melfina smiles while Sarah realizes that her gauntlet has gotten destroyed as well. However, they fought like Chinese people, seeing a discount, and before Sarah is able to gain an upper hand, Melfina falls down to her knees. Gerard applauds while Sarah helps Melfina to get up. After taking a bath, Melfina decides to visit Kelvin, who is still deep in thoughts. He is unable to understand why heroes need to be summoned into this world. Melfina surprises him from behind, and Kelvin thought she tried to copy the 2-cup 1-girl video, but Melfina says it's just chocolate. Following, he asks her why there is a need to summon heroes, and isn't there a way to stop the Demon Lord without them. Melfina explains to him that the reincarnation of the Demon Lord is more or less a natural order that can't be manipulated. She asks Kelvin if he had watched Avatar of the Last Airbender, and Kelvin understood what she was trying to tell him. Besides, she tells him that the Demon Lord cannot be identified as it looks like a normal demon, but there are 2 special attributes that make him different. However, the first attribute starts changing the good demon into pure evil, and the second most overpowered attribute that he possesses is the skill to nullify any kind of magic. Suddenly Melfina smiles and tells him that heroes are summoned from a different world, as they are not from this world, so the natural order doesn't apply to them. Because of this, the Demon Lord can't nullify magic about people who was run over by Truck-kun, or summoned after getting trapped in a glowing magic circle. Kelvin still seems to be very skeptical about summoning someone from Japan without their consent, and straight up throwing them into a world of monsters and demons, where they will be forced to risk their lives. While talking about this, Melfina seems to understand why Kelvin is worried, and explains that he has the choice to reincarnate someone to this world. So he learns that the people who are reincarnated are people ran over by Truck-kun, and are given a chance to start a new life. As the sun went down and it got dark, Kelvin ends up making up his mind, and decides that he will reincarnate a hero to this world. Everyone assembles in the basement while Kelvin gets ready to use his special skill for the very first time. Ephel then gives him a shot of Red Bull White Edition, as he wants to summon a normal person and not an overcautious freak. Following, he chants the spell, and suddenly a huge magic circle appears on the floor. A few moments later, he asks Melfina whether he made a mistake or did something wrong. Melfina replies that he should just be patient, as the person who is getting reincarnated seems to be choosing some skills. Kelvin waits a little bit longer, while Melfina claims that the selection process is complete, and soon enough, a shadowy figure appears out of the magic circle. After the dust clears up, Kelvin is glad to see that he didn't end with a weirdo. So he seems happy, after getting an hard-working Chinese Temu factory girl. She looks around confused and wondered where she is, and she immediately introducing herself as Rin, and claims that she met an angel before coming here, who told her that she is going to become a hero soon. She seems to be relieved to get a second chance to live a normal life. Suddenly Rin is tired and Kelvin is tired too, so they both fell asleep out of exhaustion. During the night, Rin wakes up and she remembers that she has been reincarnated into another world. However, she thinks about her last days in the hospital after getting hit by Truck-kun, and even the doctors were unable to save her. Next, she goes outside of the mansion and is extremely happy to see the beautiful night sky filled with twinkling stars. Suddenly, Kelvin appears and smiles at her, claiming that he was reincarnated in this world too. Also, he claims that he doesn't have much memories of his previous life. Because of this, he was very confused at first, as he had no friends or allies, and was basically all alone in a completely new world. But he ended up making a lot of friends, and soon this place became his home. He kept adventuring and fighting different monsters, and before he knew, he was upgraded to an A-rank adventurer. Meanwhile, Rin wonders why this grown man was flexing on her with his money and fame. However, she tells him that she always wanted to live in a fantasy world because she was very sick, who never touched grass or had any friends. So when Truck-kun decided to target her as his next victim, she was very surprised. After that, she thanks Kelvin again for summoning her to this world. Suddenly, Kelvin tells her that they both have dark hair, which is not very common here. As a result, Kelvin has told everyone that they are siblings from a faraway land called Little China. She is happy to hear this, because being a Chinese girl, she loves Panda Express. The next morning, Kelvin takes all of his party alongside Ellie and Ruka into the enchanted forest to a sort of picnic. Rin is very happy and is running around everywhere to learn more about this world, while Ellie and Ruka ask why are they here with them. Kelvin explains that he has put 2 strong golems at the gate to guard their mansion, but he would still like them to know what combat feels like, as if they are ever in trouble, so they can defend themselves and won't be scared and helpless. Meanwhile, Gerard cuts down a monster, and Sarah punches a huge tree monster also known as Trent. Following, they start a competition about who can hunt the most monsters first, and they goes deep inside of the forest. Suddenly, Ephel tells Kelvin that she can sense the presence of a wild Pokemon on the tall grass coming near them. Kelvin tells Mel to take care of Ruka and Ellie while he gets up to face the wild Pokemon. But as soon as it jumps over to attack, Kelvin simply uses his gravity spell that pushes him down to the ground, so the wolf is unable to move. Kelvin calmly moves towards it and then waits for its HP to go down, before throwing a Pokeball on the wolf. The Shadow Wolf immediately goes inside Kelvin's Pokeball and is now one of his familiars. After that, he summons the wolf and the girls immediately start hugging their new dog. Suddenly, Ephil claims that she can see Erd and his party coming this way. Soon Erd arrives and seems surprised to see Kelvin and his girls here. He asked if Kelvin and his friends were here to fight an S-rank monster, but Kelvin replies that they are here for a small picnic. Erd realizes that Kelvin was insane after hearing he is here for a small picnic in a dangerous forest. However, Erd tells him that his teammates got the opportunity of becoming rank B adventurers, so they plan to defeat some monsters. Next, Kelvin introduces the other girls to Erd's party, but this just ends up making them jealous after realizing that Kelvin is a Riz god, and they run away while having an emotional damage. After that, we see Gerard, Clotho and Sarah, and they claim that they saw Erd's party in the forest. Kelvin explains that they have to kill a bunch of monsters. Hearing this, a guilty look crosses all of them. Kelvin asks what did they do, while Ephil uses her magic to check for the presence of monsters. But she reports to Kelvin claiming that she can't sense a single monster. Sarah looks very guilty and smiles before explaining that they ended up killing all of them. Kelvin knew he screwed up, because Erd's teammates won't be able to get a promotion, so he rushes back to the town and apologizes to his friend, promising that he will talk to Leo and blame Sarah for it. Erd tells him not to worry about it and thinks that Kelvin is ready to become an S-rank adventurer. The next day, Kelvin and Rin wash their dog Alex to make sure that he gets clean after living several years in the forest. Next, Rin tells him that she can understand what Alex is saying thanks to her special skill named Google Translate. Kelvin is surprised as he has never heard of this ability. A few hours later, Gerard calls Rin down to the basement because her daily sword practice started. The next days, Rin practices a lot while having fun fishing with Sarah. Also, she experienced a few adventures with her doggo Alex. Besides, she sleeps every day with Alex, which gives Kelvin and Melfina some time to use a lot of baby oil in their bedroom. Later that night, Kelvin wakes up some of his party members and meets up with them to discuss with them something. Gerard has been posted to guard the room to protect Melfina and Ephil. Following, Sarah tells Kelvin that a bunch of suspicious-looking bandits have been surrounding their mansion. However, Kelvin uses his magic to spot all of the enemies, but notices that the highest-ranking member among them is just level 26, which is weaker than a toddler. So Sarah asks whether she should deal with them, but Kelvin tells her to stay in the house. However, he decides that Rin should take care of them and asks her to go out to beat these weaklings with Alex. Before sending her out, he tells Rin that she will have to face a lot of disgusting humans in this world, and this would be kind of a test to see how strong she is. Rin agrees to it, and in return, Kelvin gives her some Fortnite hacks and a special sword that he forged for this situation. Following, she goes outside dressed in her armor alongside Scooby-Doo and gets ready for a fight. The first two guys that enter the mansion are easily defeated as she kills one of them with her sword, while Superdog Alex takes care of the other one. Kelvin and Sarah were watching from a window as Sarah comments that Rin's swordsmanship can be improved. Soon enough, all of the people that infiltrated the mansion have been dealt with. However, Kelvin tells Clotho to clean up, and Sarah got the task to make sure that Rin is not hurt, as he is going out to deal with the enemy who are still hiding in the forest. Next, we see him sneaking up behind the leader of the weak group, who was waiting for his comrades. Suddenly, Kelvin says that his teammates were sent to hell. The man seems to be shocked at this, but Kelvin gets the look of a molester on his face and plans to force him picking up the soap although he is straight. A few months later, Kelvin's party traveled to an elf village in the Crest Forest. Ephil feels strange and Kelvin tells her that it might be her elf blood that causes this feeling. Then we see a few days before, and Leo found out that the assassins were sent from the Tryson Kingdom. Leo says the Kingdom of Tryson has been acting very suspicious lately. Afterwards, he learns that he has received a message from the Beast King Leonhard. However, Kelvin was sent to Gon for the S-rank promotion exam. Following, we learn that he needs the approval of 2 rulers to become a S-rank adventurer, so Melfina tells them King Leonhard is a very strong and powerful warrior. After hearing this, Kelvin was excited to meet Leonhard. Rin wonders why Leonhard didn't do the job himself, and Kelvin suspects that Tryson was somehow involved. Later on, they were attacked by elves. Kelvin clears up the misunderstanding and shows them a letter that King Leonhart sent them. Nelrus, the elder of the village, greets them and apologizes for their ignorance. Suddenly, he looked at Ephil and he called her with the name Rumiel. That shocks Ephil, and she was confused. After the misunderstanding was cleared up, Kelvin asks him more about Rumiel, suspecting that it would lead to clues to Ephil's birthplace. Nezra says that 20 years ago, they lived deep in a forest on the western continent. Out of nowhere, a powerful dragon appeared asking for an elf, otherwise he would have destroyed the whole village. But they refuses, and the dragon starts to attack the elf village. Rumiel planned to sacrifice herself and the dragon made a deal with her. She became the dragon's bride and in return he spared the elf village. Gerard asks why they left the western continent although the dragon disappeared. Nezra replies that a few years later they found Rumiel's corpse in the forest and they feared that this would cause the dangerous Dragon King to return. After hearing the story they assumes that Ephil is the child of Rumiel and the Dragon King because of her curse that Kelvin had removed, but Melfina explains to them that half-elves are always born of a human and an elf. Suddenly, Nezra apologizes to Ephil for not being able to save her mother. Ephil isn't mad at him and said that she still lives a happy life. Next, they starts to talk about the main subject. Kelvin asks about a new type of monster that is kidnapping elves in this forest. So Nezra replies the monster's causing them huge problems because they are not strong enough to defeat them. Kelvin's friends promises that they would do their best to help Nezra. He was grateful and Kelvin has a plan. Suddenly Kelvin gets an idea and asks Nezra if he can get the permission to renovate their village a little. Nezra trusts Kelvin, and his friends already suspects that Kelvin was doing some Roblox stuff with this village. In the night, an army of monsters with soldiers enter the forest. The leader of the mixed demon beast army plans to kidnap many elves again, but one of the soldiers is killed, and they are confused. The attacks didn't stop, and the leader orders them to hide behind the huge monsters. Then we see Ephil. She uses her new powerful bow and plays American Sniper. After that, we learn how Kelvin set up a lot of traps and Gerard was excited for the fight. So Kelvin tells his friends to attack and plans to crush his enemies. A few moments later, a soldier reports to the vice commander that the mixed demon beast army had been wiped out in the forest. The vice commander learns that a single adventurer defeated the monsters. That shocks him after hearing this report, and he plans to use their secret weapon. However, Rin and Melfina appears and the enemies are scared. The vice commander uses a magic item and summons a huge golem. He orders it to crush their enemies with his powerful punch, but Rin wasn't afraid. Suddenly Melfina gets a great idea, and she tells Rin to take care of the monster. However, Melfina asked if she has the confidence to fight the golem alone. Rin replies she will do her best, and goes straight into battle to defeat the ugly golem. Then Giant Lord tries to crush Rin, but she manages to dodge the attack with ease. Rin jumps at the monster and aimed her sword at its head. Unfortunately, her sword breaks and Giant Lord grazes her with an attack. Rin is aware that she would have died if the monster had hit her. But she didn't give up and rushes towards her opponent for the second time. Clotho gives her new weapons and she plans to use her dual-wielding skill to win this fight. So she launches a powerful combination attack with Superdog Alex, and they manages to take down the monster, and the enemy was shocked. Suddenly, the vice commander orders his golem to activate his true form, and Giant Lord becomes a powerful fire golem. Ephil is worried about Rin, but Kelvin is sure that his Lil Sis would be fine. Next we see Giant Lord, or also known as Ghost Rider, tries to burn Rin into ash, so he launches his attack. Rin dodges the dangerous attacks and launches another combination attack with Alex. Finally, she defeats the golem again, and the enemy's vice commander was stunned seeing his powerful golem lose against a little girl. Then we see Kelvin, and he is attacked by an enemy. Kelvin managed to create a barrier in time and his enemy greets him. Kelvin senses that his enemy is strong and is looking forward to fight the ugly dude. The man introduces himself as Cliff, and immediately sees Ephil, so he tries to rizz her up and tells her that she is the most beautiful girl that he has ever seen. Besides, he says he is a Bitcoin millionaire and owns a collection of G-Wagons at his home. Suddenly he activates his charm magic on Ephil, but before it could control her mind, Kelvin stops it and uses a blast to scare him. This totally enrages Kelvin as he tells Cliff to stop trying to touch his girl. However, Kelvin decides to play it safe and checks out the enemy stats only to realize that Cliff is level 91 and he seems to have a lot of abilities. Regarding this, Kelvin shouts at him asking if he was reincarnated. After hearing this, it makes Cliff realizing that Kelvin is reincarnated as well. However, Kelvin knows that this could turn really ugly, so he tells Ephil to hide herself somewhere. When Cliff sees her running away, he tries to shout at her to stop. Kelvin then takes benefit from this opportunity to demolish the tower and transform it into 4 enormous lances that are prepared for battle. As soon as he spots Cliff from the dust, he immediately shoots one of the lances that catch him off guard. Unfortunately, Cliff's defense is so strong that the lance is blown away. Cliff admits that without his excellent defensive magic, things could have been scary. But Kelvin tells him that it is not over, before shooting all 4 of the lances at him together. However, Cliff's magical barrier stops them all. Following, Kelvin uses some magic blasts, but all of the blasts are useless while Cliff laughs. Kelvin realizes he is fighting against Gaara from Naruto, so he was sure that there is a way to break through Cliff's defense. Suddenly, Cliff tries to distract him and tells him that behind him is Ronaldo. Kelvin wasn't a fool and sensed that just one of Cliff's side chicks tried to attack him. At that moment, Kelvin realizes that all of these girls seem to be charmed by Cliff's weird, unique skill, so he pushes all of them back, and Cliff tells him that he can't win. But out of nowhere, a super strong beam hits Cliff's barrier and completely destroys it. This shocked Cliff, and he was surprised to see Ephil. In the meantime, Kelvin summoned a group of golems and equips them with lances. The real fight begins, and Cliff intended to crush his opponent. Following this, Cliff gets into the mood for battle and gets his staff out before they both start flying up to the sky. Cliff complimented him for being able to keep up with his speed. At the same time, Kelvin is ready to test who is faster and decides to challenge him. They were both cooking in the air, and what seemed to be a fight between 2 mages quickly becomes a World War III battle. Cliff seems to have the upper hand as he pursues Kelvin, but Kelvin is able to dodge almost all of the attacks pretty easily. Suddenly there comes a point when they start flying dangerously close to the fighting golems, but Cliff still continues to attack and the blasts barely miss his girls. Kelvin gets worried and shouts at him that he is going to hurt his teammates if he keeps doing that. But Cliff makes fun of Kelvin for caring so much for other people. He says that they both are gods in this world, and all who were allowed to serve them must feel honored. This makes Kelvin mad as he thinks about his relationships with the people in this world, because he would never do such cruel things to the people who always support him. After that, they both get ready, as Cliff loads up his barrier, and Kelvin decides to unleash one of his most dangerous attacks. So their attacks consolidated, and Cliff realizes that his barrier was broken, but at the same time Kelvin's wand was destroyed. Suddenly, Cliff screams like a girl in her strawberry week. He overreacted and plans to destroy everything. He starts charging up his S-rank magic, which is basically equal to a massive natural disaster, and the entire sky turns purple. As a large amount of wind starts flowing up in the sky while all the villagers look up terrified, Kelvin lands on a mountaintop and pulls out of his slime an entire new staff that he has never used before. He starts charging it with magical energy and some slurp juice to make it more powerful. As Cliff gets ready to destroy the entire area, Kelvin's staff turns into a magical scythe, and they both launch their attacks. Then we see Kelvin manages to slice through Cliff's magic and completely split it in half and nullifies Cliff's spell. After the powerful attack, Kelvin notices that Cliff is lying on the ground with his legs chopped off. He moves towards the legless enemy with conviction in his eyes to end his life. But before he could deliver the final blow, someone saves Cliff. Kelvin turns around to see a flying Transformers carrying Cliff. Tristan introduces himself and he claims that he is one of the generals of the Tristan Kingdom. He tells Kelvin that he was the culprit behind the attacks on the elf village. However, the guy from Tristan says they are defeated today, so he uses teleportation magic to go home. After the enemies disappeared, the battle is finally over. Ephil tells the others about the good news of their victory. After Nezra learns about their victory, he seems very happy as he realizes that the village has been saved and immediately plans to prepare a feast for their heroes. Kelvin meets up with his friends and notices that Melfina, Sarah, and Rin seem to be having a race amongst themselves. It results that Rin ends up winning, and Kelvin praises everyone for their support in this battle. Later that night they have a party, but Kelvin was sitting on the top of a mountain. Soon the rest of his party also arrives alongside a small elf girl who immediately hugs Kelvin. Suddenly she starts laughing and tells him that her true name is Leonhardt. He claims that he used this avatar to spy on him to learn about Kelvin combat skills. Also, he is proud to say that Kelvin passed the exam, which means that Kelvin is now an S-rank adventurer. Following, Leonhardt says they will have a huge ceremony in the kingdom, where he will be promoted to an official S-ranker. Besides, there would be a small tournament between other S-rankers. So Kelvin got really excited and couldn't wait to take part in the tournament.